Hello. I am going to be returning to a discussion of that man in a woman's swimming costume, which Adidas thinks will sell more swimming costumes. I think they might have overstepped the mark there, but it was symptomatic of something which I've been seeing developing, which I call the elastic snapping back syndrome, and I'm not referring to the swimming costume right now. I'm referring to the position of women in society, and not a position imposed on them this time, but one they are choosing for themselves, which is even more depressing. Before I get on with that, I shall tell you I'm granniopteryx. I am on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds, where I upload my videos, and on Twitter and Gab, where I let you know that I've uploaded my videos. And the links to those are in the description, all of them. And also there's a couple of links to sites you can use to donate to my channel, and I'd appreciate that, but I'd appreciate even more if you'd simply click the like button and subscribe or share. If you subscribe, if you are already subscribed to YouTube, just check you're still subscribed. I've had some complaints about that. Right. Let's get on with this. I'm going to be talking now about the ancient Greeks, but you'll see it in the Bible, you'll see it in older writings of any sort. Women were considered maimed men. They were second-class citizens for a reason. That is, they lacked the understanding of the godlike men. They lacked the ability to do the things the men did. They lacked the ability to intellectualize as men did, and even their physical proportions were all wrong. There was a Greek sculptor called Polykleitos who actually set down the proportions of, and he based it on the size of the head. So the body is 8 or 7.5 heads high, or whatever it is. The shoulders are 3 heads across, and the waist is so many heads down, however much it was. And he came up with this idea, but he based it on the male proportions. And then the female proportions were have always been sidelined, and if you look at art books you will find far more discussion of the male proportions than the female proportions. And I think it was Polykleitos who wrote that female proportions were wrong anyway, because he divided the body more or less into half, and with the crotch, the pubic bone being the midpoint, and then you could sort of fold a man up and the feet and the head would be at the same length. But he pointed out that women have shorter torsos, so that doesn't work. And if you look at the Venus de Milo is a very good example of this. If you look at the Venus de Milo, you will see that she has the male proportions in the statue. But to do that, the sculptor had to make her hips absolutely enormous to lift her torso up so that it was sort of half and half. So they'd imposed I'll get a picture of the Venus de Milo and I'll put it up there, and you'll see what I mean. So you can see that the artist was trying to make this woman ideal, and he could only make her ideal by giving her masculine proportions. Okay, so we think we've progressed so much. Well, we haven't, because what we've got now is models who are ideals for the fashion houses, and they are all unusually shaped women. There aren't many women like those models. That's why they earn what they earn, because they have this unusual body shape which is much longer and more masculine than most women. And the end of all of this, of course, is that Adidas model who is a man modelling a woman's swimming costume, because basically that's where it's been going the whole time. And we have not said, those models, I'm not buying those dresses because they're impossible for women, most of them. They No woman has ever said that, because basically they collude in their own second-class citizenhood. And it seems like a natural thing. And that's why I'm talking about the elastic snapping back. I mean, the most extreme example of this, I suppose, would be the harem. Because in a harem, you had a lot of women, probably far more than the guards who were keeping them imprisoned in the harem. They could have overpowered the guards if they'd all decided to escape, but most of them didn't want to. It wouldn't have occurred to them to do that. And now I come to think of it, the policing of the behaviour in the harem, was that imposed by the palace eunuchs? No, it was imposed by the other women. It was the other women that stopped women from being, too clever or too unusual or too revolutionary or whatever. They were kept in place by their sisters there in the harem. And Jean Roddenberry remarked on this once. They did a pilot for the first episode of Star Trek. They did that pilot, and they showed it to a focus group, and he said he was just astonished. He'd had the second in command as a woman, and all the women sitting there in the focus group, he said, they were all going, "Who does she think she is?" Like that. He mimicked that. So they had to remove the second in command. As a female, they couldn't do it. Now, a bit later on, you got a few more females coming in, but it was very slow. And as I say, policed by women. The level of compliance of females in their own subjugation is something I do not understand. But obviously it has some sort of evolutionary meaning behind it. I just don't know what that is. And if anyone can tell me, I'd be happy to know. I mean, when you think of it, every so often an article comes up in a magazine or something. They say, oh, just look how far we've gone since the 1930s. And then they show an article that was written in like Women's Home Journal 1935. And the article says something like, well, when your husband comes home, don't tell him your problems, however bad your day was. His day was worse. Remember, he's just coming from work. Have his slippers warming by the fire and make sure that you have a hot meal ready for him the minute he comes in. Don't burden him with your problems and just listen to him. And is that any different now from the liberated women we see now telling other women that that man in a frock is not only a woman but a better woman than she is? No, the world hasn't changed. Ping, the elastic is snapping back. It always will. In the 16th century, the end of the 16th century, Queen Elizabeth I was a scholar, and women were considered to be educable enough to be scholars as well. And you see several business women, and I remember a portrait, I don't think I can find it now. There's a well-known businesswoman, and she's there with a Bible in one hand or by her side or something, and a hand on a skull on the table. That's her portrait. She wanted to project herself as a scholar and a philosopher. And that happened at the beginning of the 17th century, and then it just sloped back until by the beginning of the 19th century, women were in a worse position legally and philosophically, in Britain at any rate, since they had been in the Middle Ages. And then they had to begin the slow climb back to some sort of place at the table of a human discussion. And then 100 years later, they got back. It took 2 world wars to do that, but they got back, and now it's falling back again. It seems to be a constant fight, a constant cycle. I don't know why. But the worst is, it's not that the men are oppressing us, it's that the women are oppressing each other. And you get the most vicious attacks on women now from other women who are fighting for rights that deliberately subjugate women. I saw an article about a female, what's it called, cyclocross cyclist, and she was beaten off the podium by a man who said he was a woman. And when she complained about it, the female cycling organisation disassociated themselves from her because she was bringing them into disrepute. I've forgotten the name, but they're named after a famous female Spartan charioteer. I've forgotten the name. It'll come to me probably when I finish this video, but I'll put the name up at the side here. It's happening all over. It seems to be something that women do. If someone can tell me why, well, you see, I'm not doing it, so I don't understand it. So maybe you do. Let me know. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or granbow with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.